All right, I think we are live. We're here with Ben Allen, the new commissioner of the ISL, and Matt Dawe, the new
Hi, everyone.
CEO of the ISL. Welcome,
Hi,
guys. How you
everyone.
doing?
Really good. Thanks, Brett. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, likewise. Real pleasure.
Thanks for doing this. I'm what's 9 o'clock a.m. in Delaware. Where are you guys?
We're in
London.
London at the moment. So.
London.
So
Okay.
a little bit of an easier timeline. So thanks for
Early
thanks for having
afternoon.
us on in the morning.
As we chat here, guys, I'm going to go into a different screen when you guys talk. So we'll pull you up a little closer so that way people can get a better view of you as well. So listen, I really appreciate you doing this. There's obviously been a lot of talk recently about ISL in terms of what they were going to do this year. And then now they're pulling back a little bit. And now they've brought you guys on as new executives, which is exciting and challenging. So I wanted to kind of talk about some of those challenges today, but just to get to know both of you guys a little bit better, Ben, just tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, cheers, Brett. So I'm Ben, obviously. I used to swim for the Hong Kong national team as an age grouper. I was primarily a freestyler and a flyer. But then, I went to the UK for university and became a serial entrepreneur after that. But one of my main motivations for actually getting involved in the ISL is I've been kind of sponsoring the ISL, specifically London Raw, for a while. And, I really love swimming. And if the ISL had been an actual viable option for someone like me, maybe things would have turned out differently. I might have continued swimming. So, that's just a little bit about my background. And I'm really, really proud and excited to actually have the opportunity to take this forward.
Yeah, listen, I'll tell you what, if the ISL was a viable option for me, I wouldn't have retired at the age of 31 either. I would have been swimming into my 40s, maybe like Nick Santos.
Oh, what a beast, Nick, by the way. We respect.
Yeah, what a legend.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now Matt Dawe, you're the new CEO of the ISL. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So it's a similar story to Ben. I mean, I didn't swim to quite such a high level. I was like an age grouper in counties in the UK. And then did a variety of other sports at university. Was a water polo player through that time as well. And then again, a very similar kind of backstory going into business straight out of university, then we came on gradually on board in the ISL, first of all, in a more advisory capacity. The Constantine initially actually sponsoring some of the events and London, and then just moved into the exec role from there.
Nice.
So very similar motivations, really. Trying to make swimming professional, sustainable.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, the ISL's been something that has really taken the world by storm in the last 4 years, really, and it's something that swimming was desperately in need of. And look, I have been part of the ISL in the first season. I was part of the LA Current and had a great experience with Lenny Krasselberg and his team. I had to pull back a little bit because I just couldn't commit to some of the things they needed me for the second and third seasons. But I was a fan and I was watching from the sidelines. During that time, I will say there were some things that came up because of my role as a podcast host where, I was critical of some things that were happening. But, I think when I went to visit Constantine, I was invited over by him to come to the ISL final in Eindhoven just a few months back. And listen, when you get on deck and you see the athletes and you see the coaches and you see the support staff and you see the people working behind the scenes, you realize they're the people that matter the most. They were so happy and they were so passionate about competing for their teams and so happy to be there and giving everything they'd had. And it was just one of those experiences where you pull back and you say, okay, it's important to be critical, but it's also important to know the bigger picture here is like, this is good for swimming and this is what swimmers want. And so, look, I just wanted to be able to give you guys a platform to kind of talk about, what has been happening, why you guys came on board, where you're headed in the future. So in terms of just where we are today, what's the scenario as we sit here today?
So, well, firstly, I think from both of us and everyone in the ISL kind of league office, our colleagues, Brett, thank you very much. We really appreciate giving us this platform and having the opportunity to chat to you and obviously our community today. But in terms of where are we at now, right? We made the decision to postpone the season because we recognize the need to really push towards financial sustainability. We're not here to try to say the same things again to the community or try to pull the hood over your eyes. We understand that there have been problems, especially financial ones and management of expectations. We understand that a lot of athletes need the money. And so that's why we really just wanted to start putting the ISL on a track of just being sensible, and not having this kind of toxic culture, essentially, of pushing forward even whilst we still have outstanding obligations to people. So the main decision to postpone the season comes from us because we recognize we've got to pay everyone first, not just athletes, but staff and commercial partners. And then after that, it really is just taking a step back, right? And being a lot more sensible about how we're going to structure the season, both commercially as well as in terms of delivering the product, just making things simpler and more streamlined with the rest of the community, such as actually working with national federations and athletes on the calendar, for example, rather than just being like, donk, here's the match schedule, deal with it. That's definitely something that we want to pull back from. And, to do all of these things properly, we need a bit of time. Obviously, Konstantin's focusing on the financing. We're focusing on a lot of internal restructuring. And then hopefully when we get everything sorted in the near future, we actually have a proper kind of whole year of a leeway into setting things up successfully for next year.
Matt,
or
is
even
this
before,
a new?
potentially.
I was going to say, are these new positions, commissioner and CEO? Have we had these positions before, Matt?
Yeah, it's kind of yeah. I mean, it's kind of a restructure of the way that the executive worked before. I mean, the ISL is a startup, right? So right initially, it grew kind of organically out of what Konstantin was doing, and there were some executive roles appointed. The structuring is actually reasonably complicated, and then we have had essentially, well, I would say, two incumbent CEOs in that role. But when we came in, because as I said, we came in initially in a kind of without portfolio role to advise and just to help out on a voluntary basis. We've been doing that for some months, and then we were talking to Konstantin and the executive more, and decide, and in collaboration with them, decided that we thought that we should split that executive role. To have a Ben's role, which is commissioner. So like a lot of sports leagues have that role. In the ISL, it's a little bit different because there aren't owners of each individual franchise appointing the commissioner. So it's a little bit more of a split of the exec role. But what we're really doing is allowing us, by splitting this role, by having two of us, to be more outward facing while still taking on the responsibilities that were taken on by previous executives.
When you talk about splitting the role, Ben, I'll move to you. In terms of splitting the role, what would be the roles you think? What's your role, Ben, and what would be Matt's role, you think, in terms of the split?
Yeah, so I will take a step back and say, even though we've kind of divided the role between the two of us, as Matt said, like the ISL essentially is a startup. Mm-hmm. It's a huge enterprise value startup, given the amount of money that Konstantin's put into it, but it's still a startup. And so we have to be flexible, right, in terms of what we need to do. And I think one very key thing is that, at all times, there's at least one of us, right, who is going to be available to the athletes, to the community, and also in constant contact with Konstantin, so that we can actually be transparent and give updates. But if we were to try to, have a think about dividing the role, I would say that, I have a bit more of a longer history of the ISL, especially in terms of like showing up and supporting the athletes. I mean, I've been supporting British swimming for many years, and I was, showed up to Vegas, for example, in season 1. So I've known the athletes for a lot longer. So I think I've been taking on more of the kind of communications role internally with athletes as well as general managers, and really making sure that everyone knows what's going on. And also kind of working a little bit more externally with people like yourselves, Brett, to really just focus on what we can control in the short term, which is improving our communication. I think, in terms of Matt's role, it's a little bit more along the lines of long-term sustainability and commercial strategy. Really trying to think about how we can overhaul the way that the ISL has done things in the past, and rethink the logic with regards to the way that we approach trying to make the league, a proper, viable, professional product.
Exactly.
Right. So let me say this then, just in terms of like the number one issue for both of you right now? What would you think it would be?
Payments.
Yeah, payments.
Payments.
Yeah.
Payments, right.
We're
So
not here to dance around it.
Yeah.
who do athletes go to when it comes to this issue? You know, they're kind of on an island singly, you know, they're all positioned around the world and they're all got the same issue, but where do they collectively come? Who do they collectively come to on this issue?
So, you know, I have been, you know, okay, I'll take a step back. The first thing that I've been doing since I, you know, formally got involved a couple of months ago as like in a communications role was to really just reach out to all the general managers as a first step and make sure that they were kept in the loop. You know, I wanted to make sure that anything, any news, what was happening and going on inside the league would first be reported to general managers and club staff, and then they could go and tell the athletes, which means that news is actually going from the league to the GMs, to the athletes, and then finally, you know, it will be out to the media, whether through our own public post or through, you know, secondary party sites or, you know, podcasters, for example, maybe sometimes even like yourself,
Right.
and really just get the flow of information right, because I didn't want this situation where, you know, in the past, and we accept that this is the ISL's fault, that athletes would sometimes find out about the season not through their general managers or from the league directly, but through kind of third-party sites picking up on the story and then publishing it, and that's really bad. But to kind of directly answer your question, like, who do the athletes go to? Well, as I said, the general managers actually know what's going on now. I talk to them at least once every week, collectively, in an update email, and I also talk to a lot of them on WhatsApp as well, so really trying to get up-to-date information. But another thing I've consistently said is I'm open to being contacted. Yeah. Like any athlete who wants to reach out to me is absolutely welcome to. In fact, you know, I've been talking to an athlete who messaged me this very morning, you know, about some of the challenges that they're facing. And, you know, we're serious about this. I will get back to you. I understand that the postponement of the season and also unpaid, you know, even things like the solidarity payment mean that, you know, I know an athlete who wants to get married and is struggling as a result of lack of payment. Guys who want to go on training camps and they need this. You know, it really does affect people's lives and livelihoods. We get that, you know, and even though I can't like give an immediate solution to this, even though we are working on it, like in terms of who to talk to, just to answer your question, Brett,
Really.
Talk to us.
Yeah.
We're not going to ghost you. Like we are actually taking upon the responsibility to make sure that everyone's kept in the loop.
Well, just in terms of kind of maybe establishing new credibility, it's important to look back on just where the issue was and how we can change it moving forward. I understand that there's a war going on right now, and that's where a major part of this issue is, you know, in terms of maybe moving forward. But even before that, we had issues of late payments. So Ben, Matt, maybe you can answer me this as the CEO, like, why was there late payments before the war? I understand they're why they are now, but how do we fix that moving forward? What was the issue in the past?
I think I can't really speak to too long in the past, this season, really the early seasons, because we weren't really involved at that point. We didn't see exactly where the those payment flows came through. But I think I can go into some detail on where the money comes from, right, and why even though the conflict starts at a particular date, even slightly before that, there were issues related to the conflict. Right. And that's so at the Energy Standard Group, which Konstantin owns, they have broad interest, but one of their primary interests is the energy grid, essentially in eastern Ukraine. Right. And they sell to a number of very, very large entities, including the Ukrainian government. They provide their energy. And Konstantin was taking money directly out of the profits from that and putting it into the ISL. And I think part of, as I said, I can't speak to the reasons for particular late payments in the past, but one of the things we are trying to change, even right now, in terms of diversifying financing options, is looking for more variable sources of funding, because you know, it's Konstantin's a very wealthy man, right? But it's for anyone, if you lose a really significant source of cash flow like that, it's difficult to liquidate large assets to pay such a significant amount very quickly.
I think it is actually worth just stepping into this point and saying, you know, Energy standard basically means electricity distribution networks across Ukraine and even other parts of Eastern Europe. But there are two things that guys need to understand. One, some of his stuff is literally being blown up at the moment. It's not cool. And there are literally thousands of Energy Standard employees that Konstantin has to look after as well who are facing the troubles there. Yeah. The second thing is, as Matt said, not exclusively, but a big, essentially a party that owes money to Energy Standard is the government. And, Konstantin's not going to call up Zelensky and be like, hey, bro, can you, I'm going to drop that invoice on you now. It's just not really feasible at this point. So, that's why it's very, very important, A, for people to understand, like, it is genuinely very challenging for Konstantin to be juggling a bunch of these balls. And he's already got a couple $1 million in Ukraine, which is earmarked for the ISL, which is why he originally wanted to set a deadline of around like end of Feb, but then he couldn't get the money out because of international capital controls. So it is challenging, but this is partly why, especially on Matt's side, like, we really want to focus on diversifying income streams, helping Konstantin to do that himself as well, outside of Ukraine. But secondly, the league in its own entity to generate revenue and sponsorship and kind of move into a different model.
I think, and that's exactly right. It's something else I want to really highlight, which, again, I have to apologize for, we don't necessarily have access to, and we at the start yet in terms of exactly where money came from and why certain payments are delayed, because we're focusing very much on meeting the payments right now. But I think one of the really key things that we looked into very heavily, even when we were thinking about taking this role, is really just the big picture reason behind that. And I think I can say with a lot of confidence that this isn't a situation where Konstantin is deliberately or anyway
trying to screw with people,
and delay payments or to cause problems like that. He really, and I think we can attest to this. He always intended to pay on time. I think, frankly speaking, set some unrealistic expectations right at the start in terms of the speed at which payments were going to be delivered. And I think he was overly ambitious with that. I think he would certainly admit that. But there isn't any malice here. And I think, from our side, our job is to work with Konstantin to try and get as quickly as possible payments to everyone who's open. And we take that very, very seriously. I think I'm again grateful to Ben for going into this. It is important to, and I really do want people to appreciate, especially on Konstantin's side, it is a very difficult situation. It is incredibly complicated. We are trying very hard, and our job is, Ben said, working with him to get alternative sources of financing in the meantime, but really our job in the longer term, and this is our main objective on this front, is to make the league sustainable. So revenue generated by the league means very predictable payments to athletes, and that is that's really important.
Well, I will say this: we're having some slight video issues on your side, but the sound is clear. So you guys just keep talking. Okay. The video will figure itself out eventually, I think. I've kind of pulled back from the full screen. But
Are we frozen with the slightly angry face?
Possibly, yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
That's all right. The video will catch up. The sound is fine, so we can keep talking. Well, let's move on to this then, because I think that addressed kind of the past payment issue. What does the rest of 22 look like for you guys? Obviously, we've pulled back from the season. It sounds like there's not going to be anything until 23. So what is the, what's the rest of 22 look like for you two?
So I wouldn't say that we're only looking at 23. Okay. I will clarify this. When we say we've postponed the season, what we actually mean by that is competitive matches in the way that the ISLs existed in the past.
Okay.
But one of the things that we're very keen to do, assuming everything gets sorted and paid and we then have cash flow in advance, I'm very, very keen to, for example, have camps that the ISL funds and brings all the teams together towards the end of 2022. Because I think it's very important to, A, give the athletes something to do under the banner of the ISL, and B, in line with our new content strategy, we want to start creating alternative content, which isn't just matches, right? And start looking at shorts on Instagram, things on TikTok, really kind of fun and engaging things.
Right.
I won't need to go into too much depth, but we've properly done a deep dive into the ratings from our broadcasters and our YouTube analytics, and we really think there's a missed opportunity. We're open about this as well. Yeah. You know, I'd love to get some of our world-class athletes to just swim against a bunch of round or do like, you know, or technique instruction videos or, you know, funny things. As well as kind of mini documentaries into the personalities of our swimmers, or even building up some narratives, you know, rather than, well, you know, maybe going a little deeper into Ryan, you know, Stewart, Ryan Murphy, and the comment that Ryan made. Because these are really interesting kind of narratives to put a spotlight onto and humanizes our athletes more than just kind of they swim and then poolside interview and then they go back to the team box or warm down or something like that. So, yeah. Plenty of opportunities. I'd love to do camps, and also, if possible, budget permitting, maybe some junior league engagement, maybe you know, working with the masters community, like just really reaching out and doing things in a slightly different way, but in a way that also makes economic sense.
Yeah,
right. I like that a lot, actually. I think that was part of the missing piece. I felt like we had the swimming down, we had the athletes and the performances, but there was a connection missing in terms of you know, the stories and the backstories and the exactly. the rivalries and the behind the scenes type stuff that I think you can put out daily content, which is what we're doing actually on our YouTube and getting a lot of views from that, of just putting out easy daily content that really connects the audience with your message and your product. And I think that's a fantastic idea moving forward.
Yeah, so. I'll say as well, actually, you know, it's not just for the league. I think this is very important for the athletes to understand. You know, we also want to give all our athletes a better platform to monetize themselves. Like we're actually here not just simply to make the ISL self-sustaining and revenue generating so we can pay everyone on time, etc. and more. But as the sport of swimming grows and is positively transformed by what the ISL can give people, that allows the individual power of athletes themselves to monetize to grow exponentially as well. Right. So, you know, we're very happy to shine the spotlight on our athletes and to build their backstories and to humanize them in the eyes of the public, not just for the ISL, but for themselves, because everyone doing better is so important for swimming to grow as, you know, as a whole. Yeah, 100%. It's very important.
Looks like we got our video back, so that's a good thing. We were frozen for about 3 minutes. That's all right. Good. We're back. All right. Well, then, just moving forward, then, I mean, that kind of summarizes some things and plans you want to do for 22, and it's exciting that it's just not going to disappear. There's some other things happening, but in terms of real competition, getting these, you know, guys and girls back in the water, getting teams competing again, 23 looks like the most viable option. What are we looking at for 23 right now?
I think it's quite early to say on that in terms of scheduling, etc. I mean, if we look at the past year and the scheduling changes that were very difficult for everyone, especially the athletes who have to balance the training programs.
Well, especially with FINA, kind of the World Championship flip-flop and everything. We
don't want that. And what our goal is, as I said, we can't at this stage commit to a particular dates, say for 2023, we're not in that position. Right. Our mindset though is to try and make it much easier for athletes to fit the ISL into their broader year's worth of competition and training, both in terms of camps provided by the ISL and the competition. We've been looking very, very carefully at everything really, so from historic swimming competition to other sports leagues which have done very, very well in fitting seasons of different lengths into different types of international schedules. We have a very good idea about where we're going with it, but I think that our main priority is to make it easier than it has been for the athletes to really feel like they can just come and compete and compete and compete, and really get into a focused mindset of being with the team, competing for the team. And what we don't want to do is spread things out over a long period, interspersed with other competitions, with people having to juggle all kinds of things. Because it's just on that, like it's so important that the viewers feel that the athletes are really engaged in the competition and care hugely. And we know that they do. And the way that we can bring that out much more easily is by just making the scheduling easier.
I will say, Brett, in terms of super quick and easy answer on that, though, even though we can't commit to exact things, there are a couple of things that we really want to do. One, have the calendar not clash with anything, and we want to work with national federations and athletes, to figure this out. In fact, I was in Sheffield about 2 weeks ago chatting to British Swimming about this. Like, we're very serious about this. Second thing, we want to have the match schedule published much earlier than previously so that people actually know what's happening. Right. Thirdly, we're actually going to announce the matches with locations rather than, TBD. And, and another thing is shorten the season. We listen to the feedback. We understand that having something just incredibly long just
doesn't work.
It doesn't work. Well,
it will hopefully
put
one day,
it this way, right?
now.
And we were having a chat to Constantine about this super openly. Like, at the point where the league is self-sustaining and can pay everyone, all 300 plus athletes, like a minimum of 100 grand, and the top athletes through the ISL alone can make over $1 million. Yeah, maybe we can extend the season, right? Because that is the professional viable option for people. But we're not there yet. We're not there yet, and we can't be too ambitious and overexpanding. We gotta start from a self-sustainable position, really start to grow our core audience and get more people, because it's not just competitive swimmers, right? The key to unlocking the true potential of swimming, not just the ISL, is for everyone on the street or everyone who swims in the world to care about ISL and want to be engaged. And so, Caleb is actually on the same level as Cristiano Ronaldo, for example. Adam Peaty is going to be on the same level as Messi. Maybe that's many, many, many years down the line. And, we're not trying to be, kind of pie in the sky or unrealistic about this. But that's what we want to see in 100 years, right? And, that's why we got to start with our core audience and actually respond to what you guys, people who follow you, Brett, for example, you are our core audience. We want to give you what you want first. And as we can build and get more money in, become more sustainable and more people are engaged, then we can start being a bit more ambitious. But that's
well, Ben, I gotta tell you, Ben, just the things that you talked about there, the only criticisms I've had with the ISL are things that you just talked about. And it sounds like you guys had the same concerns and you've taken them to Constantine, you've talked about them, you're looking to address those and change those, which to me, that's it. That's all I really cared about, is those little things where I feel like you can make some adjustments here and there. Obviously, the payments is a big deal. You guys are addressing that and taking that head on, which is fantastic. I think that a lot of the criticism comes from people that want to just hate on the ISL for everything they're doing, and I think that's a real negative approach. I think, like I said, when I walked on the pool deck and I saw the athletes themselves, they were the ones that were happy to be part of a team, to be competing, breaking world records at the ISL final. I mean, come on,
yeah.
That's real swimming. That's real competition. Yeah. They were the ones that were happy to be pulled together from all parts of the globe, to be put on a team, to
it's so
compete against
fun.
other teams.
They love it. They have a great time, and
they do.
That's another really big motivation for me. I've been traveling around supporting London Raw, and I've gotten to know some of the athletes from the other teams as well, and such a fantastic community.
Yeah.
Obviously competing as part of a country. And this is something else I just kind of want to address as I'm on this point anyway. The ISL isn't necessarily like anti-Olympics, and there's a lot of narrative that's come out about that. We're really not about that. It really is just about pushing the sport of swimming to the next level.
Right.
And when you compete for your country at Worlds or Olympics, etc., like obviously, there's national pride. It's the pinnacle of our sport. It's absolutely amazing and a privilege to be able to do this. But it doesn't, always come around that often. Not everyone gets the opportunity, and so we do need to have a wider platform to allow, swimmers to actually become professionals. And, a very big part of that is the chance to compete as professional teams, to be with people from different cultures and different countries. And it's just so much fun. It's incredible.
To be embedded in that community.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, and everyone pushes each other to be better as well. Like coaches learn new things,
for sure.
Athletes learn new things.
Sharing that's going on in the deck, yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
Matt, I got a question from the audience here for you, CEO question right here. Can we please have the matches live streamed on YouTube? Is that possible?
That's interesting, because that is something that is, we haven't confirmed that. That is something that that was one of the first things we took to Constantine as an option. because I think on that point, we want to make the matches as accessible as possible for everyone. Right. We understand that there's a wonderful masters community in swimming, probably the best masters. In fact, I would say there's certainly the best masters community of any sport. They primarily watch on TV, so we take our TV broadcasting very seriously. But where I think we've fallen down is the accessibility of the matches to a wide audience, particularly young swimmers. Yeah. And that is, I know Ben's mentioned before, I've mentioned before that we've been speaking actively to YouTube. That's one of the things we're talking about. And we really want to see that happen. That's, yeah.
Yeah.
It's an easy one.
Long story, yes.
Yes.
We want to do this.
Absolutely. Okay, good. One last thing from me in terms of just the understanding of really what is going on. It's very fast paced and there's a lot happening, but I did find myself where I was confused with kind of the point system sometimes, who was getting this amount of points and that amount of points on certain swims, and it got a little confusing. Is that something that you guys want to address in the future as well?
100%, yeah. That's something else we want to simplify. I think this also feeds into a wider point about scheduling, about the competitions and everything. I think Constantine has a really, really great vision for this league. Yeah. But I think one of the things we did is expanded a little bit too fast. We were very aggressive, and then we had COVID, we've had the war in Ukraine, we've had a bunch of things that hit us.
He's been dealt bad hand.
He's been dealt bad hand, yeah. And I think there was a bit too much expansion a little bit too quickly, both in terms of the complexity of the format and the schedule. So these are things we look at together, really, because our mindset is to get as good an entertainment viewership experience for the viewers possible, while giving the athletes the easiest, best, and most exciting competition lineup that we can. And these things really go hand in hand. So we're reviewing the match scheduling, we're reviewing the competition format a little bit.
Right. Can you guys see the comments down here on the screen?
Not quite.
Okay, so this one, Andrew said, "I'm a non-swimmer. ISL was so much more watchable than World Champs." So, positive comment there. Smooth.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Andrew. Downtown. We appreciate it.
Another comment here from Tim. Do you think the ISL will incorporate team trades and free agency similar to the NBA and NFL? Is that something you're looking at?
On that one, I think that's down the line. I think in terms of parity, we have we instituted a draft. That's something we're looking to keep. If you look at how, NFL free agency is the biggest show on, right? That's their off season extends basically all year round. All the off season is news because of the kind of depth of their free agency and the amount of money. But if you look at how that developed over the years, they started out trying to recruit from college, which was the larger athletic competition, and free agency became this enormous spectacle decades into their growth. So in order to have real free agency like that, the ISL would need to move to a situation where the individual clubs and the individual GMs have a much larger salary cap. They're, that they're competing with more money at stake over athletes and are individually funding themselves as well. Because at the moment, with the league centrally funding athletes' payments effectively, this season certainly, that type of thing just doesn't really work. So that is something great. We want to see that down the line. We think that makes the sport much more exciting. We think that gives athletes more autonomy. These are all things that we're very in favor of. But that, in order to get there, there's a lot of infrastructural growth that needs to happen in the league.
Gotcha.
I will say, though, that we are taking active lessons from other sports leagues.
Sure.
Indian Premier League, cricket, great one, NFL, NBA, especially NFL films, really inspired by that to do alternative content. We're trying to be sensible and learn from success stories elsewhere.
What about this comment here from one of my former teammates from Sydney 2000?
Incredible.
Backstroker.
Matt Welsh?
No, Josh Watson. Watson. Matt was one of my teammates.
Fan, so
Matt was certainly one of my teammates, but Josh was better than Matt Welsh. Right, Josh? Is there any plans to run a fantasy league for the ISL?
Also, yes. Same answer, effectively. I think, there's a lot of stuff that we want to do, and there's a lot of stuff that Constantine wants to do, which we've sat down with him and we really love, particularly around things like that, fantasy, getting the audience, especially the digital audience, actively engaged in the matches, bunch of ideas. In order to get there, there's a series of steps, right? And that's not just payments, which is the first thing, as we keep saying, but we need to have I think, a more regular structure before we, and run that probably for a couple of seasons before we start engaging in things like fantasy, because
Right.
there's a level of predictability that you need in order to get good metrics and to make it an actually engaging experience. So we're a
Right.
little bit off on that.
There are 2 points I will add to that, though. One, there's a lot of confusion over ratings and why the ISL has a rating system, but it actually ties in exactly to things like a fantasy league, because we need to have a way of objectively ranking every single different athlete to make a fantasy league viable, you know?
Right.
So that's actually a very, very good point. The second thing is just a little bit more about our own background and why, you know, another reason why we slotted into this row. You know, obviously, the ISL is you know, key passion project for me and Matt at the moment. But we do own a tech company as well, which has the experience in kind of dealing with gamification, the metaverse, and a lot of this kind of stuff. So again, the key thing from the ISL and for us is payments and just sorting out housekeeping. But in terms of a long-term vision, we also have the capability in-house, essentially, through our network to work on this kind of stuff. And that's definitely kind of engagement in not just traditional communities and, you know, through broadcasting and YouTube, et cetera, but kind of taking it to a different level is something that we definitely have in mind. And we also think we have the capabilities and expertise to do so. So
Right,
that's another
right.
reason why we're very keen on this.
Guys, I was going to cut this off at 30 minutes, but we're getting some good questions coming in now. So are you okay to just keep answering some questions?
We're very well-
very
yeah,
happy to keep
yeah.
rolling for us.
Okay, good. Well, yeah, there's some good comments coming in. More people have joined us here. So let's have a look at this one. Do you plan on keeping skins and varying match day lineups or varying match day lineups?
Skins, yes.
Skins, yes,
We
yeah.
like skins.
I think it's a bit of like an ISL signature.
Yeah.
Right. yeah.
With regards to mixing up the match lineup, that's something that Konstantin has had in the back of his mind. And I think it's important to actually dissect the logic as to why he wants to do this. You know, a big part about why Konstantin wants to kind of introduce extra unpredictability in the matches
Right.
is precisely so that, you know, not every match is the same, right? And it gives so much more variability, and people can go into a match genuinely not assuming, for example, that energy is going to be iron or sorry, iron, but you know, just throwing it as an example. Sorry, Dorina, sorry guys, but really trying to put in a bit of variability. And the way I'll explain this as well, actually. You know, let's say there are certain swimmers who recover significantly more quickly in between races. But if the lineup is predictable, then head coaches and general managers can strategize accordingly. But if there's a system which rewards a team for winning a certain event and then they get to pick the lineup, you know, they could try to mess with another team's strategy by playing on the fact that certain swimmers don't recover as quickly. But, you know, let's say these swimmers are the people who have to swim back-to-back 50s, for example, and that may be a disadvantage for them. So I can see where Konstantin's logic is coming from, and I think that's a very interesting conceptual idea. That being said, I think
We need to communicate it better, right?
A, we
That's-
need to communicate,
That's the first thing.
and B, genuinely, I think before we take the step, we can't do it unilaterally. We need to consult with our audience, like you guys. Tell us if you think that's a good idea and whether you'd be interested. You know, another thing that we could do is not every match, maybe most matches have the same lineup, but 1 or 2 matches can be experimental. Third thing is, you know, rather than the league, like us just being like, bonk, this is what we're doing now, we talk to athletes, talk to GMs, talk to head coaches, see if this is a viable thing, and we can refine this together. I think having this consultative element is super important moving forward, and you know we really want to highlight this.
Right. There's a message here from Kyle House. Kyle talks about storytelling behind the scenes and that sort of thing, and we touched on this earlier. But is there any plans maybe for a documentary, like a year-long documentary following team or an athlete or something like that?
I think that yes, there is, but again, we have to be a bit careful in terms of resources, and particularly in order to do a full year-long documentary, we have a bit of a ways to go, because with a reduced season, athletes are going to be by our current plans in the same place, certainly not for the whole year. And so, yes, we want to constantly be checking in on our athletes, our coaches, our GMs, everyone, to make sure that we're all growing and we're all in a good place building towards the season. But I think we're a little bit of a way off from like a year-long documentary. What I will say is, I don't think you necessarily need it to be that long. in order to really create some really great stuff. Because we have a whole bunch of awesome athletes, and many athletes for whom the ISL really is. I know we say the Olympics is still the pinnacle of the sport, and probably will be, for a long, long time. But there are athletes who take ISL incredibly seriously and who have great stories to tell, and for whom it really is the most important thing.
Yeah.
And bringing that out even in a short term is something we're very.
I think that's what Felipe Delgado was talking about here in terms of the personalities and getting behind the scenes of those. Kyle House had another interesting comment here, which I find interesting. They're kind of like letting the swimmers be billboards for like in NASCAR or something like that, where the swimmers could have their own personal advertising. Is that even a possibility?
I think. Swimmers already have their own personal advertising in terms of their existing sponsorship deals. I think a big priority for us as a league is not to step on that really. And I think because of where swimming is right now, we are in a really great position to grow league-wide sponsorship, which feeds directly into athletes while promoting them more so they can go get their individual sponsorship. We don't see that as a conflict of interest in any way. There are obvious difficulties with, like, if you're comparing to NASCAR and F1, just the amount of space that you can put logos on. I'm not super unless there's some changes. I'm not super keen to stick logos.
Kyle, I like the idea of temporary tats actually. You were telling me actually, Matt, that you would be willing to put an ISL tattoo on yourself.
Only under very specific circumstances. But
all right, there we go.
I think that in terms of stuff like temporary tattoos, things like that, we're not really looking at that right now. That's something we'd really have to speak to athletes about. We think that it's certainly possible for athletes to have really wonderful sponsorship opportunities beyond swimming, not just related to our events from the platform the ISL can help provide, and also be part of the fact that we as a league have much more reach than an individual athlete to sign larger kind of sponsorship deals. Swimming, we do unfortunately have some disadvantages in terms of advertising on things that athletes wear, because in competitions, in training, wear fewer things.
And also you're in the water.
And also you're in the water, right? Yeah. So there are limitations in that front compared to other sports, but there are lots of other advantages that swimming has in terms of regularity of meets, in terms of the importance of training and all the great stuff that athletes do outside of competition, where we see huge opportunities both for them individually and for the league.
Would you guys ever consider bringing in 25s into the event lineup, or even like 200 relays, 50s or even 100 relays where it's a 25 of each stroke or something like that?
I think
we consider everything.
We're very open to considering everything. We honestly need to, again, consult with everyone, right? I love 4x50 relays. Like, they were my favorite event back in the day.
Especially love 4x50 relays.
In college, At NCAAs, they're the best relays.
Exactly. It's so much fun. That being said, though, like we are also aware that we have a lot of events on the program. It's really intense over 2 hours and then 2 days. We don't want to tire athletes out too much. And we also still want to, given the fact that the ISL format was designed so that it could be fitted into a 2-hour broadcast window every day. So we do have to approach adding new events with a little bit of caution. But you know what? As I said, we can experiment. We'll talk to you guys. Thanks for these suggestions. We'll talk to athletes and GMs. And maybe, when we do have next season coming up with competitive matches, maybe we can try it out in one match and mix it up a little bit in the regular season, for example. Or maybe we can even try this out if we manage to do a camp in 2022, just for fun. Like, each club, ideally, if we get a cluster together, different clubs can actually have some fun relays against each other, and we can live stream this, or even virtually compete, like the European teams if they're doing a training camp in somewhere in Europe versus the Americans, etc. We can be creative in doing things in a fun way.
Yeah, and as to add on to that, just quickly, like as we've been saying, the competition format itself, we have to be somewhat consistent with that, because as a viewership experience, people need to understand what's going on. And if we're just constantly changing everything all the time, it's not going to be great for that.
Exactly.
But I think where a lot of these innovations can be made, it really does feed back into exactly what Ben said. You know, the alternative content, alternative stuff that we want to do, and that is a very consultative process with the athletes, coaches, and the audience too. You know, open mind on that.
Just a comment here on super suits. I'll say this: they don't make super suits anymore. You know, the companies don't manufacture them. You know, the only reason why they made them in the first place was to sell them. So they're not just going to make these expensive super suits for a competition where they can't even sell them or use them. So that's out of the question. But in terms of long course meters, have you guys considered a change in format from short course meters to maybe long course meters?
So three things I'll say. Firstly, Remel, love your username. Hope you're actually Caleb Remel Dresser. Secondly, super suits. Yeah, Brett, you're absolutely correct. And there are not that many of them lying around these days.
No.
Though you know, I do think it would be fun to get a whole bunch of people in JKEDs and X-Glides and just have something crazy. That'd be quite fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of long course, I think it's actually important to take a step back and remember that when Konstantin set up the ISL, he had already been doing Energy for Swim event, named after Energy Standard, obviously, in a few years before that. And he had the pro group training out of Turkey under James Gibson. And most of those events were actually long course. And that's where he pioneered a lot of the ideas, like skins, for example, that are now kind of signature as part of the ISL competitive matches. Certainly, we could go back to long course. That being said, there are some practical considerations. Production does become a lot more difficult in long course. You just need like cameras to be following things so much more, and but it's a possibility. And we started from long course, so let's see. We remain very open down the line. But again, I think with regards to really changing things up a bit too much, again, our immediate priorities are like get everyone paid. Do a bit of restructuring, and then start from a place of familiarity and also what people really want, right? Athletes as well as the community, so that we have a consistent and economical product. And as things go well down the years, and we're realistic, this is a year, multi-year project at the very least. We can start, playing around with things and being a bit more experimental. But we gotta start from the basics. Yeah.
Well, lots of good comments coming in now. A lot of people putting their 2 cents in. Any plans to connect junior swimming better? Yes, there certainly is.
Yep.
Putting the ISL style meets at age group level. Yes, I've had talks with Konstantin about that. Training clinics and workshops. Yes, I've even had conversations with Konstantin, so I know that's a fact, and so I know you guys are heavily involved in that. So that's definitely part of the talks and plans for the future for sure. Another comment here, it says, any plans to incorporate the para side of swimming? I haven't heard that.
I think we've spoken about this to Konstantin, and yes, there are. It's another one of those, unfortunately, a little bit down the line because, and that's simply because of the competition format and some of the time limitations that we have, and also the complexities of the teams. I think we're working very hard, and Ben said before about the rating system, which has been, I think, difficult for people to understand. Another purpose of the rating system is to ensure gender parity in the teams and in the way athletes are ranked. When we start incorporating paraswimmers into that, that becomes more complex again. So I think we do have ambitions to incorporate paraswimmers.
Absolutely, we are as inclusive as we can.
Possible. Yeah. I think we're unfortunately a little bit away from that right now. And that's simply down to the complexity that would have on the format. However, I think we are incredibly open to engaging as much as we possibly can with paraswimmers and master swimmers, junior swimmers, everything that was said before, as part of our broader engagement with the community and the other stuff we're doing outside of competition at this point.
I think this has actually brought up a good point too. Just us sitting here talking and then interacting with people who care about swimming and are passionate about it. And this brought up a thought for me. Is there a way that they could connect with you? So some of these ideas and some of these questions could come directly to you and you could interact with people and kind of help establish that credibility to know that, we are taking in your opinions and concerns and we are answering those. Is other than just this kind of format, is there a way that they could connect with you?
Yeah. Well, I will say firstly, guys, like, we actually do read comments. different publications, on our own Instagram posts and our YouTube videos. Like we will read everything. But you know, Brett, honestly, feel free to put my email down in the like description on YouTube.
Okay, yeah, I'll put it here in the comment section.
If anyone asks you personally, like feel free to pass our email on. And guys, genuinely email us. Like a consistent message I've been telling to athletes and GMs and pretty much everyone I talk to is like, we are now a league that talks to people. Yeah. That is the one thing in the short term we can actually control, and we are very serious about doing this. So guys, message us. Yeah. And we you know, Brett, again, thank you for the platform. We will be coming back on, I'm sure. And as and when we have developments and new news, we will be talking to people as well and keeping everyone updated. And we appreciate the opportunity for dialogue, because you guys are the people who ultimately consume the product. Yep. And we want to make a product better for you. And so the more feedback and constructive criticism that we can get, the more we can actually incorporate that into the way that we do things and give you what you want to see.
100%.
There you go. That's excellent.
Honestly,
well, there you go, guys. I put Ben's, the commissioner of the ISL. His email is up. It's in there if you want to email him directly. Ben, I don't know if that's a good thing, but they're coming at you now.
Look,
I'm for both of us, and then it's split a little bit.
All right, I need to put yours, Matt. Ben, could you text me Matt's? I'm not sure if I have.
Yeah, I'm going to do that right now. Let's
do it live, so that way I can put it in.
Sure. And I mean, like we have also, you know, we monitor. We're looking to grow out the social media and things like that. We at least one of the team will read what people post and will feed that back to us. And so, yeah, we are as open as we can be. As exactly as Ben says, you know, we recognize that ultimately when we talk about alternative revenue, what alternative revenue really means is that you guys in the swimming community and the broader sports community watch and consume the ISL and engage as much as possible. So we are very, very keen to do this.
Perfect. Well, there you go, Matt. That's the CEO of ISL. His email address, personal, is up there now. You can get him.
Hopefully not the personal. Hopefully
Matt,
what did you do?
It's the ISL.
Oh, okay, there we go.
Well, I mean, it's personal enough. It's got your name on it, you know, so it's going straight to you. It's not going to anyone else. It's going straight to Matt. There we go. Me, Ben's up there, Matt's up there, and you can reach them now. So excellent. I think this has been a good start and answered a lot of great questions. And look, I think what I've taken away from this the most, and I've known this for a little while now, is that the ISL is passionate about this continuing. A lot of people think this is going to end. They think it's dead, or what, you know, they want to take a negative spin on this. Maybe even from day one, I've heard those things. Oh, it's never going to work. And yet here we are. We're still talking about it years later. We're still, you know, the ISL has brought on new staff, a new vision, and new plans to grow and get better and continue to bring swimming to the world. So listen, I'm happy to hear it. I'm excited about the message that you guys are putting out. I'm happy to help in any way that I can. Honestly, you can use my platform.
Thank you.
Whenever you need my platform, you can use it. And I appreciate you guys taking the time today, okay?
No, pleasure.
Yeah, really. Yeah. Thank you, Brett. And also thank you everyone who's you know, tuned in, has listened, and has passed us comments. We genuinely talk to us.
We really appreciate it.
Yeah, excellent. All right, thanks, guys. Take care.
No worries, Brett. Take care. Have a great